Na, nur weil da ein Missverständnis ist. Ja, das weiß ich schon. Das muss sein. Habe ich so nicht vergessen. Das weiß ich. Ja, aber jetzt kannst du dazu machen.
So just before the break, we were talking about how emptiness is a hidden phenomenon, and that means that we can't see it with our senses, our five senses. We can't perceive it in that way. So the way to access it, to experience it, we have to go through a process of reasoning, of inference. So they say there are lots of different reasonings that can be used, and these reasonings are explained in different texts from Indian masters, and Tibetan masters, and in English there's some very good books on this. I don't know, I guess most of you would know if you can read English, but for example, Meditation on Emptiness by Jeffrey Hopkins. So that explains the reasonings, some of the reasonings. And another book by him is called Emptiness Yoga, which is my favorite book because it's more conversational. Meditation on Emptiness was his PhD thesis, so it's kind of more formal and a little more difficult to read, whereas Emptiness Yoga, he was actually teaching. He was teaching a class on this subject, so he was kind of more talking, conversational, and giving some nice examples and so on. So it's a little easier to read. So those two books are really good for knowing the process of realizing emptiness by means of reasoning. And they say that of the various reasons or reasonings, one is particularly powerful, and that is that reasoning of dependent arising, dependent origination, dependent relationship, which basically means contemplating how things are dependent and therefore cannot be independent. Okay, because the conception of inherent existence sees things as if they were independent of everything else. They were standalone, autonomous, cut off, separate, all by themselves. So that's how things appear to that conception. And that's not true, because nothing exists that way. Nothing is independently existing. So, I don't know, for me personally, that approach is easier. I don't have such an intelligent mind, so some of the other reasons that I find really difficult to work with. But the one of dependence, contemplating how things are dependent, is not so difficult. And so it's kind of an approach, a way of getting closer to an understanding of emptiness. So I thought with the little bit of time we have left, we could look at that and maybe do some meditation on it to see how we could use this idea of dependence to get closer to an understanding of emptiness. So again, what we're trying to do is overcome a misconception which exists in our mind, an innate, instinctive, intuitive. We're born with it. We're born with this conception. It's not something we've learned from our parents or our teachers at school. It's something that was already there in our mind from birth. Seeing things as inherently or independently existing. So that's been with us all our life. And it's the root cause of all our problems. So now, if things really did exist in the way they appear to that conception, then things would be independent. They would be able to exist independently. But in fact, that is not the case. There's nothing which is independent. And so So it is said that there are 3 ways in which phenomena are dependent on other things for their existence. And these are sort of progressively more difficult, starting with the easier to the more difficult ones. So the first of the 3 is that things are dependent on causes and conditions. This only applies to impermanent phenomena, as we were talking about yesterday. Permanent things like emptiness, space, the absence of an elephant in the room, and so on, don't depend on causes and conditions. They're not produced from the coming together of causes and conditions. So permanent phenomena are left out of this one. But most of the things we deal with in our life are impermanent things. Okay, our bodies are impermanent, our minds are impermanent, other people, their bodies and minds are impermanent, our houses, our cars, food we eat, clothes we wear, so all the things around us that we deal with in our everyday life are impermanent phenomena. Permanent phenomena tend to be more abstract, so we can just put them aside for now. And so impermanent phenomena then are dependent on causes and conditions, and that's very easy to understand. Even a kindergartner can understand that, right? I think when we're in kindergarten or like little kids, you put seeds, you have a flower pot, yeah, pot of soil, and you put some seeds in the soil, and you add some water, and then slowly you observe the little sprout coming up and turning into a plant, into a flower, and so on. So it's easy to see that like these flowers and plants and trees and so forth come into existence in dependence on causes and conditions. Without those causes and conditions, those phenomena wouldn't be there. They wouldn't exist. So it's relatively easy to understand that. But still, it's not something we normally think about. We don't always think about this. And it is helpful to think about this. It's helpful. Because when we understand that something wasn't always there forever and ever, but came into existence at a certain point in time because of other things, causes, conditions, and so forth, then it has an effect on our mind. Our mind can become more calm. Because sometimes we get really emotionally upset, angry, or excited, full of attachment and so forth, about certain objects or certain phenomena or certain events. And if we, go back and think about how that came into existence because of this and that and so forth, then it's like our mind becomes more rational, more clear, more intelligent rather than emotional. Like, for example, 9/11. When 9/11 happened, a lot of people got really emotional about that, including myself. It's my country. And but I remember listening to some programs, like news or talk shows, where there was some expert, and somebody who was an expert on, world events, and the person, was just saying, oh, well, we speculate that this happened because of such and such and such, sort of looking at the causes and conditions that led to this horrible event, yeah? So it's a kind of more rational approach, a more intelligent approach, rather than just reacting emotionally and then saying, let's get our guns and get those bad guys, So in that sense, it can help us with our emotional problems when we are having emotional problems like anger or depression or grief or jealousy or whatever. To look at this thing we're emotional about in a more rational way how it came about through causes and conditions. So it sort of helps us to cool down. Our mind cools down, calms down. Yeah. For example, jealousy or envy. So this is one of the disturbing emotions that comes up in our mind sometimes when somebody has something we don't have, or they get something we wanted but we weren't able to get. So this very painful feeling of jealousy or envy can kind of come up in our mind. It's really, really painful. So it causes a lot of suffering in our mind, and it can also cause us to behave in ways that are not very nice. You know, we might make some nasty comments, or treat people in a sort of nasty way. So it's not a nice state of mind. So I think that for me, contemplating things in terms of causes and conditions really helps. Like, if somebody has something you don't have, they get something you didn't get, then you can think, well, why is that? What's the reason for that? And according to Buddhism, it isn't just a question of luck, his good luck and your bad luck. It's a question of karma. What happens to us, what we experience, is the result of our karma. So if someone else got something, they must have created the karma, the cause for it. And if we didn't get it, we don't have that thing, it's because we didn't create the karma. So thinking in that way, if you can accept karma, of course, if you don't accept karma, then that doesn't work. If you can accept karma, then that kind of gives you an explanation, a rational explanation as to why this is happening. So then, there's no need to get upset about it. Getting upset doesn't help. It's not going to change anything. What you need to do is create the karma. Make sure you create the karma so that you will get that thing in the future. But even without thinking in terms of karma, sometimes it's just a question of things in this life. Sometimes people work really hard. Some people work really, really hard, and then they do well, right? So that's one possible reason. And maybe you didn't work so hard. Maybe you're more lazy. So sometimes just looking in this lifetime, you can see that causes and conditions were there for that person and were not there for you. So this gives an explanation to the situation, which can help you to cool down your jealousy. Also, when we have strong feelings of aversion or hatred for somebody, I think it's also helpful to think in terms of causes and conditions. For example, when we don't like somebody, there's this person who we kind of see as an enemy, and this very negative feeling comes up towards the person. So the way that person appears to us is sort of very solid and very concrete and totally out there, objectively existing from their side. This bad person, this irritating person that causes me so many problems. It's almost as if they've been like that forever. They've always been that way forever, and they always will be that way forever. So there's this kind of appearance of solidity and permanence there. So it can be helpful to think about the reality of that person, and how once upon a time that person didn't exist. He was nowhere to be found in the world. And then they had a mother and a father who fell in love, had sex, and this little egg got fertilized and started growing in the womb of the mother, starting out as this tiny little microscopic thing. And then slowly grew, and arms and legs and head and so on came, and then eventually came out as this really cute little baby. Right? Babies are usually quite cute, quite adorable, quite, it's hard to hate a baby, right? So that's how this person looked once upon a time. Yeah, they were this cute little baby. And then slowly they grew, became a little child, and so on and so forth. So just to think about the process of this person coming into existence from nothing, from not existing at all, to then coming into existence in dependence on their mother and their father, the egg and the sperm, the nourishment in the mother's womb, and so on and so forth, the whole process. It really changes the way that person appears to you. Yeah? They don't seem so solid and real, like this permanent, fixed, horrible person. And also you can consider other causes and conditions that may have contributed to the person being the way they are. Maybe they were abused as a child. Maybe they had really bad experiences as a child, and so they've developed this kind of way of being, this behavior, which you find so irritating. Right? So anyway, just in short, thinking in terms of the causes and conditions that gave rise to a certain object, whether it's a person, an event, a situation, a happening, can really help your mind to calm down and see things in a more rational way, more intelligent way, rather than just a emotional way. So it's a useful tool for working with disturbing emotions. The idea of this weekend course was how we can use this idea of emptiness in our daily life. So this is one thing we can do. One way we can use this idea of dependent arising, dependent origination, which just means that whatever exists does so in dependence on other things. Nothing is completely independently existing. So one way things are dependent is on causes and conditions. And the second way that things are dependent is on parts, components, things that make them up. And this applies to all phenomena, not just impermanent things, but also permanent things. So everything has parts. And again, that's not so difficult to understand. We could take this flower apart. Scientists are doing that all the time, taking things apart and analyzing, down to the tiniest components that they're made up of. And finding that even the tiniest components have parts and so on. So that's also a helpful tool. Like when we're having an emotional problem, to look at whatever it is we're emotional about, whether it's a person or an event or whatever, to see it in terms of its components, how it isn't just one whole, solid, indivisible thing, but it's actually made up of many different things. And without those components, the point is, if you take away all these components, there's nothing left. That thing doesn't exist without its components. Right? So that isn't so difficult to understand, but it's very helpful. Again, going back to the example of a person that you have problems with, you feel angry, hateful, irritated with, it's helpful to contemplate how that person is made up of parts. Take them apart. Not literally. We have this expression in America, in the movies, I'm going to take him apart. You're really angry at somebody, you're going to pull them apart. So we're not talking about that, not that kind of thing, but just mentally imagine the components making up that person. Okay, there's skin. We did this yesterday, didn't we? We did a meditation on impermanence with our body. We contemplated how our body is made up of parts, starting with the more obvious parts like our skin and bones and organs and so forth, and then those are made up of smaller parts, cells, and even the cells are made up of smaller parts, molecules, atoms, and so on. So considering all the parts, the components of our body, then we get a very different sense of our body. The body appears in a very different way rather than whole and solid and concrete. So the same, you can do the same with the other person. Imagine them as a mass of components. Skin, blood, bones, cells, molecules, atoms. Yeah? Just think about the parts that make up that person. And if you do that, you'll see a difference. You'll see your mind change. The way that person appears to your mind is not so solid anymore. So that's also very helpful. So you can do that with anything you're afflicted about, anything you get emotional about. A piece of German chocolate cake. Think of it as made up of parts, molecules, atoms. May not look so delicious anymore. So why don't we do a little bit of meditation on that and see how this approach could be helpful for us. So make sure you're comfortable, not tense, but relaxed. And still try to keep your back straight. Keep your eyes open a little bit to avoid sleepiness. And make the decision that you will do your best to stay focused on the meditation and not think about other things. So now, bring to mind a person towards whom you have strong emotions, like aversion, dislike, anger, hatred. Somebody you find very difficult, very disturbing. And try to have a mental picture of that person. And try to recognize how the way the person appears to your mind is somewhat solid or concrete, objectively existing, independently existing, like something existing without depending on anything else, but really there, out there, by itself, from its own side. So it may seem as though the person is inherently difficult or disturbing or irritating from their own side. So you can't help but react with those feelings. It's almost like they're forcing you to feel aversion or dislike or irritation because they're really like that, out there from their own side. So now let's investigate to see if the person really does exist in such an independent or inherent way. So if it was true that the person was independently existing, then they wouldn't depend on anything else for their existence. For example, they wouldn't depend on causes and conditions. So, is that true? Or did this person come into existence some years ago in dependence on their parents? Okay, just spend some time thinking about that, how this person was born. Or first they were conceived in their mother's womb, and then slowly grew and was born and became a small baby, a small child, and so on. And just try to recognize how the person came into existence in dependence on other factors, causes and conditions. And being dependent on causes and conditions doesn't just refer to the beginning, when the person first came into existence, but it's also an ongoing process. The person continues to be dependent on causes and conditions all through their life and also at the present moment. In order for that person to go on living, they need causes and conditions like food and water and air and just those basic necessities of life. So they're constantly dependent on causes and conditions in order to remain alive. And another way in which the person is dependent is on parts and components. So when the person appears to us and we feel aversion, anger towards them, it may seem as though they're one whole solid thing, not made up of parts. So think about the parts that make up the body of the person, just as we did yesterday with our own body. body have parts, but their mind also has parts. The mind of the person isn't just one whole solid thing, but it's like a stream of different experiences arising and passing, like a river, constantly flowing, constantly changing. So see if you can understand now that although the person may appear to be something independently existing, that is not true, because they exist in dependence on causes and conditions, and they also exist in dependence on parts, components that make them up. And there's a third way that the person exists dependently rather than independently. This is very subtle, very hard to understand, but let's just give it a try. So this is that they depend upon mind labeling them as such and such. In other words, dependent on mental labeling, conception, and language. So the meaning of this is that even though it appears that the person is something existing from their own side as a person, as this person or that person, whatever their name may be, that's how they appear to us. But in reality, when we try to search for that person, whatever their name may be, or even just to say person, or him, or her, when we try to search for that thing, which is the person, if we look within their body and their mind, look at all the different parts of their body and their mind, we can't actually find something we can point to as the person. All we find are parts of a person. But a part of a person isn't a person. If a part of a person were a person, then we could say that the person's nose was the person. And then you could have just a nose, and you could say, well, that's a person. But obviously that doesn't work. And then we might think, yeah, it's true, none of the individual parts are a person. The nose isn't a person. Their stomach isn't a person. Even their brain, just a brain, isn't a person. I can understand that. But then if you put all those parts together, the collection of the parts, that's a person. But that doesn't work either. Because what is a collection? Is a collection something we can point to we can put our finger on and say that, right there, that's the collection. For example, a forest is a collection of trees. But can you find something you can point to as being the forest, other than the trees? So it's the same with a person. When we consider a person and how they're made up of many different parts, parts of their body, parts of their mind, we can't point to any of those individual parts and say, that is the person. But then when we try to point to a collection of the parts, where is that? What is that thing we can point to as being the collection and say that is the person? So what Buddhism says is that a person is none of the individual parts that make them up, nor is it the collection of all the parts. Instead, a person is just labeled, just named, independence of the parts. You have a collection of parts, the aggregates, the body, the mind, and in relation to that, or in dependence on that, we say person, or Hans, or Maria, or whatever the name may be. So that is what the person is. Just what is labeled, what is named in relation to a collection of parts. Okay, so now you can come out of the meditation, relax, open your eyes. So, like I said, the first two of the three ways that things are dependent are not so difficult to understand, how things are dependent. Causal conditions, dependent parts. But the third way is very difficult to understand. So don't worry if you feel totally confused or shattered or whatever. So that's actually the main reason, the main thing we need to understand in order to understand things, as explained by the Prasanghikas. So the Prasangika view is that everything, persons and every other phenomena, the way in which they exist is that they're just labeled, merely labeled by the mind, the process of conceptualization and naming, labeling. But to really understand that is not easy, difficult, and usually we need to study, like the Madhyamika or Tara. There's texts that explain the meaning of this, and think about it and meditate on it, and over a period of time, the meaning of that becomes more clear. So I'm sorry we didn't have time to really go into that. But like I said at the beginning and yesterday, that understanding emptiness is actually quite difficult, and we ideally need to go step by step towards an understanding of emptiness. First understanding impermanence, how things are impermanent, and then understanding how persons, for example, a self, a person doesn't exist as something permanent and independent and unitary. So if we approach emptiness in a sort of gradual way, step by step, then it becomes easier. That's why I spent more time talking about impermanence and the other types of selflessness, rather than just jumping right into emptiness. So, ideally, you'll probably need more weekend courses or longer courses on this topic of emptiness to really understand it. But I think that's normal. Normally it is a difficult topic that takes time. And we only have a weekend, 1.5 days, so not enough to really do justice to the topic. But anyway, I hope that it has been helpful for you to have a better understanding of emptiness, and also to have some tools that you can use in your daily life. So, like I said, for me personally, I'm contemplating impermanence is very helpful. It's something I can understand, it's something I can use in my daily life, and it does help to calm down the mind, cool down the mind when it's getting upset about something. And then also today, what we did just now, looking at things in terms of how, dependent on causes and conditions, they come into existence and dependence on other things, and how they're composed of parts and so on. So that way of thinking is also, I think, very helpful, very practical, especially when we're facing problems with people, problems with other things in our life. So those are useful tools in our daily life, and they're also ways of increasing our understanding of emptiness, getting closer to an understanding of emptiness. So that was my idea, to share those things with you, and I hope it has been helpful. Are there any last questions before we finish?
Realization of action.
Yeah, maybe you guys have realized emptiness. All your questions are answered.
No more questions.
So maybe we can do some meditation prayers to dedicate the
36, if you want the normal one.
Maybe you can skip the one, the Midsema.
Which one?
Skip the Midsema, but do down to Lamasoprimishis Lama prayer.
Sorry, I have to...
We have first the Geva, then the Chanchu, then we have the Kamri, His Holiness,
yeah.
And then we have Lama Zopa Rinpoche.
Yeah, so maybe that's...
Yeah, the last one is the Mikmen. Anyway, we don't do this.
Yeah, that's not really a dedication
Yeah.
prayer. Yeah. Okay.
In German again.
Yeah.
Which page?
36. Möge ich durch diese heilsamen Handlungen rasch den Zustand des spirituellen Meisters Buddha erreichen und sämtliche Lebewesen ausnahmslos auf diese Ebene bringen. Möge der kostbaren höchsten des Geistes noch nicht entwickelt hat, ihn entwickeln und wer ihn entwickelt hat, ihn nicht verringern, sondern immer weiter entfalten. Möge die Quelle von allem Nutzen und Glück in dem von Liebe umgebenen reinen Land, aber bitte schwör, wenn sie Kerzen, bis zum Ende des Daseinsweisens verweilen. Mögest du, der die Verhaltensweisen des Erhabenen aufrechterhält und die siegreiche Lehre des sanften Beschützers bewahrt, hütet, ausbreitet, alles was sich nimmt, sie zu festigen, und die Segenskraft der Erde bei höchsten Jubiläen erfüllt, zu unseren deiner Schülerschaft ständig verweilen.
So it's said that the very best dedication we can make is within an understanding of emptiness. So think that the merit or positive energy we've created is empty of existing inherently, it's merely labeled by the mind. And we who created this positive energy and merit are also empty of existing inherently, merely labeled by the mind. And the goal to which we dedicate our merits, the attainment of enlightenment, that too is not inherently existing, but is merely labeled by the mind. And all the beings, the sentient beings on whose behalf we wish to attain enlightenment so we can help them, they too are empty of inherent existence and merely labeled by the mind. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I wish you all the best in your study and practice, and may you all quickly realize emptiness.
On the behalf of Erich, on the behalf of Erich? Behalf of Erich. On behalf of Erich and the center. Thank you very, very much. And I didn't yet get a yes for the next coming, the beginning of 2014, but I didn't get a no neither, isn't it? So
No, I'm going
we
to be
hope.
doing a retreat next year.
Yeah, but maybe
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, we'll
There's
see.
a little
We'll see.
tiny gap in between, you know, finishing the one and starting the other
Yeah, we'll
would
see.
be wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.